Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So even though now the top 50 players in the NHL list is in the books, we still have to do the goalies. I do a top 20 goalie list. You'll see my 11 through 20 on Instagram and TikTok. Go follow those pages. But today on the YouTube, I'm going to give you my top 10 goalies. And when looking at goalies, even more so than skaters, I've talked about it before, these lists are not solely based on this season. And especially with goalies, considering how volatile they are season over season, I do value the 2, 3, 4-year track record of some of these goalies. This season definitely means the most. Don't get me wrong, of course, but I'm just trying to explain some of my thought process behind this. So we're going to get into it right now. Considering you guys don't know who 11 through 20 is, I'm going to start with number 1 and work our way down all the way to number 10, and I'll probably tell you who I have at like 11, 12, and 13, but let's get into it. And at number 1, I got Igor Shesterkin. I think, especially after this year's playoff run, he yet again takes that number 1 spot. Probably had it after the 2022 season. It was either him or Vasilevskiy after the 2022 season, where he won the Vezina with a .935 save percentage and 2.07 goals against, led them to the conference finals that year. Last year, still a very solid .918, as well as having a .930 in their first round matchup against the New Jersey Devils, despite losing that series. The only reason why it went 7 was because of Igor Shesterkin. And then this year got off to a bit of a slow start, had a .901 in his first 35 games. Jonathan Quick was honestly kind of carrying the load for the New York Rangers, but in his last 20, he had a .930 and then was great for them yet again in the playoffs with around the .923 save percentage. The only reason that they went up 3-0 to the Carolina Hurricanes was mainly because Igor Shesterkin was standing on his head. It is not like the Rangers dominated those games. So I think, considering the fact he has just been so good since entering the NHL, on top of having that playoff prestige that the guy at number 2 maybe doesn't have, I think right now you got to have Shesterkin as your number 1 goalie in the NHL heading into next season. Number 2, though, Connor Hellebuyck, another fantastic season by Connor Hellebuyck, a .921 in 60 games, well-deserved Vezina trophy, and although not the best playoff performance, he had an .864. I think that was more so on the defense score. I think it was more so like 65% on the defense score, 35% on him. Again, it doesn't completely absolve him, but the defensive breakdowns from the Winnipeg Jets, the amount of 2-on-1s, 3-on-1s that he had to deal with, of guys like Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Cale Makar getting up on the rush, was just simply unacceptable. And when you look at this guy since 2018, since he's really became Connor Hellebuyck that we know and love, in 2018, he had a .924 in 67 games, second in the Vezina. 2019, a .913 in 64 games. Didn't get any Vezina votes, but still a very good year. 2020 started 58 out of 70 games, had a .922, won the Vezina. 2021 started 45 out of 56 games with a .916, fourth for the Vezina. 2022, his worst season, he played 66 games, still had a .910, no Vezina votes. And then in 2023, last year, had a .920 in 64 games and finished third for the Vezina trophy. So when looking at this guy, he has just been a workhorse, and he's still playing some of the best hockey of his career still. So I think the number 1 and number 2 spots kind of got to be locked up at this point. But we move on to number 3. And at number 3, I have Thatcher Demko, and I got some flack for keeping him in my top 10. I had him 10th when I did this list this time last year, because when looking at his downfall season last year, it was a tale of 2 different seasons. To start the season, the Canucks were horrible. I think they lost their first 10 games or like 8 games, and as a result, he had an .883 in his first 15 games. Then he goes down with injury for like 2 months, but after that, in his final 17 games, once he got back from injury, he had a solid .918. In the prior 2 seasons, he had a .915 as the Canucks starter. One season, he played 35 out of 56 games. The other season, he played 64 games. This guy was a stud. He just had a really rough 15-game season where the entire team was basically abysmal, and this year he proved me right by keeping him in the top 10, and he was the second best goalie in the NHL, at least in the regular season, with a .918 in 51 games. Arguably could have won the Vezina trophy if he never got hurt. I probably still would have gone with that Hellebuyck, but still, by far the second best goalie in the regular season. Didn't play in the playoffs due to injuries, but when looking at it, I think Thatcher Demko needs to be definitely top 5 after this season. I personally have him at number 3, just considering this season he was the second best goalie in the NHL. At number 4, it really starts to get maybe a little bit controversial. I have Vasilevskiy here. I understand the last 15 months have not been kind to Andrei Vasilevskiy. He had a .975 against the Toronto Maple Leafs last year in the playoffs. Then this regular season, after dealing with an injury for the first 6 weeks, he had a .952 games. In the playoffs, he had an .897, but that was more so just Florida was the far better team. He was a little bit hung out to dry. He played fine in the playoffs, but he has not been the Andrei Vasilevskiy that we know the last 15 years, because you look the last last 15 years. What am I saying? The last 15 months, he has not been the same Andrei Vasilevskiy. This is a guy that had 925 in 2021. A 916 in 2022, a 915 in 2023. So his track record has just been so good, and you can draw that back to 2017. He's been above like a 915 every single season. So I'm still going to respect him, given his track record. Even though he's had a rough 15 months, I'm still going to respect him. I'm still going to put him at number 4. If he plays like this again next season, I'm going to drop him down to like 7th or 8th, but I'm still going to give Andrei Vasilevskiy the benefit of the doubt as of right now. At number 5, another guy that had a bit of a down year, Juuse Saros, still at an okay 906, but this is a guy that never had below a 914 as an actual NHL goaltender that played more than 20 games in a season. In 2021, he had a 927, 2022 a 919, 2023 a 918. I think he's going to bounce back, especially considering Nashville should be an even better team. So next season is definitely going to be big for Juuse Saros, but this guy is still immensely talented. At number 6, a similar case with Ilya Sorokin, my goaltender, my number 1 goaltender. He had a down year, but again, down year for him, still only a 908, and the penalty kill really did him no justice. They were the worst penalty kill in the NHL at 71.5%. I think he's going to bounce back, but again, this has a lot to do with the track record. He probably wasn't a top 10 goalie this season in the NHL, and Varlamov ended up coming in and being the starter for the last 10 games, so it definitely was disappointing, but this is a guy that finished second for the Vezina last year with a 924 in 61 games, and the year prior, a 925 in 52 games. So as of right now, I'm still keeping him in that number 6 spot, but I understand if you have him in the 7 spot or maybe the number 8 spot. I think anything beyond that is massive recency bias for a guy like Ilya Sorokin. He needs to be top 8. I have him at number 6. Number 7, Jeremy Swayman, and this season was a very good season for Jeremy Swayman. Was arguably regular season and playoffs, maybe the 3rd best goalie in the NHL. He played 44 games, so still not like the legit starter in Boston. That's my one thing with Swayman. How is he going to react to playing 55 to 60 games next season and then go into the playoffs? But this year he was great. 916 save percentage in 44 games. Then in the playoffs, a 933 in 12 games. Carried them in that series against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was the reason why it went 6 against the Florida Panthers. He was amazing for them. I just can't quite put him over a guy like Saros and Sorokin quite yet. Guys that are more so workhorses that we see can handle 55 plus games in full seasons and put up very good numbers. I got to see Swayman do that next year. I think he will. I'm not trying to doubt him, but until I see that, I can't put him ahead of guys like Saros and Swayman that have multiple seasons of playing north of 55 games with north of like a 918 save percentage. So Swayman right now gets the number 7 spot. At number 8, Sergei Bobrovsky. Now, in looking at him, he's kind of like the reverse Andrei Vasilevskiy. His reputation in play has completely shifted over the last 15 months. Last year in the playoffs, dragged them to the Stanley Cup final. He had a 935 in the 14 games of the Eastern Conference side of the bracket. He did get a lit up against the Vegas Golden Knights, but he comes back this season, and it wasn't a fluke. He had a 915 in 58 games, finished 3rd for the Vezina Trophy, and then was doing very, very good in the playoffs until like when the Oilers won their 3 games, they really lit him up, so that kind of killed his stats. He only had like a 906. He had a 914 before that. But when looking at Bobrovsky, he's playing some of the best hockey of his entire career. Definitely the best hockey since he won that Vezina, since he carried, was a Hart finalist that year back in 2017 for the Columbus Blue Jackets. But he's playing some of the best hockey of his career. So as a result, I have him at number 8. Number 9, Linus Ullmark, the latest acquisition by the Ottawa Senators to fill their goalie problems. I think that he will. When looking at it last year, a 938. Yes, that we knew that he wasn't actually like the best goalie in the NHL. It was just kind of like the perfect season from the Boston Bruins, but he was fantastic. He was top 3 in basically every single expected model last season. This year, very strong as well. 39 starts, was more so the 1B. They about split pretty equally, but he had a 915 compared to Swayman that had a 916. He unfortunately got the boot come playoff time, but when looking at it during the regular season, still ranked 7th in the NHL in terms of goals saved above expected. He was very good. It's going to be a lot different playing in Ottawa compared to Boston, but I think that he is going to rise to the occasion and yet again put up very solid numbers. Even if he is only like a 908 for the Ottawa Senators next year in 55 games, that is a massive upgrade for them, so I don't even think that he has to be above 915 like he's been for the last 3 years with the Boston Bruins. And then lastly, at the number 10 spot, I got Jake Ottinger. I do have Jake Ottinger here, a bit of a down season, but this is a guy that in his rookie year had a 911, then a 914, then a 919. We really expected him to take that next step. Didn't exactly happen. Had a 905. He wasn't horrible, but he showed up in the playoffs. He showed up when it mattered. He had a 913 throughout the Dallas Stars Western Conference Finals run on top of the advantage advanced stats being very good. He was third in the entire playoffs in goals saved above expected. I think he's going to bounce back, considering his prior 3 years all were above 910. The Dallas Stars are a very good team. In terms of honorable mentions, I think my number 11 guy was pretty clearly Jacob Markstrom. I could see you having him over Jake Ottinger. Number 12, I went with Varlamov. I don't even think that's biased when looking at it. He's been over a 910 basically since he arrived on Long Island. So when looking at this, let me know in the comments, what do you think about my top 10? What do you think about my 11 through 20? Maybe I'll just flash it right now to give you the full thing. But yeah, let me know. I'll be seeing the next one.